Hi, Jim Doyle here for Fire in the Hole Distributors. We're distributors of Pulstar pulse plugs and also Pulstar Direct Hits, which is your high energy ignition systems for your two-stroke power toys. Today I'm going to show you the proper installation and also how to put the kit together for the shielding. The RF shielding kit helps keep the radio noise down on your paramotors or any of your other two-stroke engines that have a magneto-driven ignition. When you get the kit in the mail, basically what you're going to have is these right here. First thing you want to do is go ahead and disassemble, just basically take everything apart into its component pieces so that you have this, the wiring, which is the ground wire. Just go ahead and unwind it out of its sleeves. The black is going to be the heat shrink tubing, which we'll use in different stages for the assembly. So we just have everything just laid out here like so. We're going to start off and assume that this is your spark plug wire. I have this end on here right now. Yours may be potted in or not removable from the coil. So we'll treat that as if it is a solid end and potted into the coil. What you want to do first is remove your old spark plug cap, slide the boot off. Some of them won't have a boot, some of them are solid rubber, like so. Either way, once the boot is off, most of them will just unscrew. Now, go ahead, remove the old plug cap. Some of them don't unscrew. On the inside, you may find a screw that needs a flathead screwdriver. Unscrew the screw and the spark plug wire comes out. Remove the old boot. Now, very important to do here, in case your unit you're using a tiny tack or some other tack that requires a pickup wire like this one. This is a standard tiny tack and this is the pickup wire. Normally we'll run the pickup wire out the back side, which is going to be closest to the coil. So if the wire is removable, both ends, from the coil and from the spark plug end, it makes it easier to install. But for this particular demonstration, we're going to assume that this end right here is potted into the coil. So what you want to do, first of all, is go ahead, get 4 or 5 wraps, whatever the recommended number of wraps for your particular machine is, and wrap that onto the wire. Now the end of the tiny tack wire, there again, this is going to be grounded to ground the RF. So what we want to do is take one of the pieces of the shrink tube and make sure that the end of this little wire is covered, because if the end of the little wire here, which is bare in a lot of instances, contacts the shielding, your tiny tack won't work because it's grounding the signal. So we're going to put this on over the top, and we're just going to go ahead and cover up the last few turns there. You can have a heat gun, or in this case I have a little propane torch which does the shrink tube quite nicely. If this is attached to your machine, make sure you don't have any fuel lines or anything that's going to ignite. Now the next thing you want to do is go ahead, and you'll notice there is a belled out end here which will fit on the cap, and then there's a standard end right here. Now we have the pickup wire for the tachometer on there like so. So the next thing we want to do is go ahead and put the ground wire on there. The ground wire is going to go basically the same way. It's going to come out right at the end near the coil, and we just want to wrap this around just a few turns onto the wire, and we're going to leave this exposed because it needs to ground to the shielding. Before we put the shielding on, let's run a piece of shrink tube down on the shielding, and that's going to polish off this end. Run the shielding down the tube, down the wire, and all the way as close as you can get it to the coil. Now compress this, bring this out like so, right? Hold this in place, take the big shrink tubing, work it over the top, and just go down with it a little ways, like so. Now inside the shielding, inside the shielded cap, there's a screw on the inside, and that's where that's what we're going to do, is thread that back on there. You need the boot on there first, so just have to press in there, slide the boot on. Some wires, this is a 7mm wire. If you have a 5mm wire, it's going to have a lot of play inside there. With most of the kits, I give you 2 pieces of shrink tubing. What the shrink tubing does is you put it over the 5mm wire, shrink it on, put the next one over there, shrink it on, and it takes up more space. And then it makes it just larger. It takes 5 to about 6.5. And it'll make it much, much easier to thread that in. So if you have a 5mm wire, make sure you use the shrink tubing. So back to this, go ahead, put that in there, push a little bit while it starts to grab on the threads. Keep going until it gets harder to turn. All right. Now at that point, go ahead, grab the boot, and try not to be pulling on. Don't pull on the wire, but go ahead and slide the boot up over that like so. Now this is where that belled out part comes in. What you want to do is take the belled out part and put it over the plug to where it makes good contact with the cap. Now hold this end right here and tug it a little bit. As you tug it, it will tighten. Once it tightens like so and come down to where the wire is, move it down just a little bit. Move the shrink tube up to the top. Get your heat gun or your torch, whatever you're using. Right? And while you're pushing, you want pressure against that toward the cap. Then just start the shrinking process. No hurry, because you want it to bite. There's the surface that on the boot itself will help hold the shrink tube in place. And there we have this end as the finished product. Now to finish off the other end, what you want to do is holding this right here. It's going to be a little warm to start with, but just push and form the tubing, the shielding tubing, to the wire. Just push it down. Now what we're going to end up with at the other end, just move the shrink tube back down out of the way for right now. Okay, we have leftovers, and that's going to happen. Now here's what we do with that. We stretch it down to where we have the ground wire in there, and we also have the Tiny-Tech wire in there. And we're going to measure it so where it's close to where it needs to be, and this would be at the end of where it butts into the coil. So you're going to have some left over. What we want to do, you can either trim it off with scissors, or what I like to do, and it's very, very simple and makes a very nice end, is just fold it in on itself. You can fold it in just around in a circle, and it will fold quite nicely. And that's actually what we did on the other end. When I send it to you, you'll have that end. Okay, so there goes all the little loose pieces. Get it stretched out nice again. Move the other shrink tube up to the end and shrink it. So that's where we have it right there. Essentially that end is done. This is the ground wire. This goes to the Tiny-Tech as was discussed before. And so essentially at that point, it goes onto the spark plug, snaps on, and the shielding kit is pretty much done. Find a nut or a bolt that you can attach this to, ground it to the frame, and that's all there is to it. If you have any other questions, you can always get me. We'll run the website at the end of the video here, and stay tuned. I've got a couple more videos about the Polestar pulse plugs and the direct hits. It's Jim Doyle from Fire in the Hole Distributors, and thank you for watching.